Hello and welcome. Yo soy Catita from Yo Soy Fermentista, and today I have the great pleasure of speaking with Susun Weed. Susun is a legend. She is a mother and a grandmother and a homesteader and an herbalist. And she has written many books about how to use simple, safe herbs in our everyday lives to promote health and well-being. She's a keeper, a guardian of the wise woman way, and we're going to talk about what that means in just a minute. I had the privilege of meeting Susun in person a few months ago in the state of Washington in the United States for an herbal conference. And I'm so grateful for your time, Susun. I know you've got a lot going on, and it's just it's a pleasure for me to speak with you after seeing almost all of your videos probably and your blog talk radio that you do on Tuesday nights and reading your books. The newest one just came out called Abundantly Well, so we're also going to talk a little bit about what this book contains. So again, thank you so much for your time, and maybe you can just start out by introducing yourself a little bit and talking a little bit about the path that you've walked to get to where you are.
I am so grateful that you have invited me to spend this time with you. Thank you so much. Each opportunity that I have to share the Wise Woman Way is very precious to me, and I really honor you and your work that you are doing. You know, like many people, I grew up in the scientific tradition. There was one day out of the year that was very special. I got new clothes and new underwear, and I was taken off to the doctor for my annual physical exam. And there I learned the two most important things that I ever learned about healing. The doctor would examine me and then turn to my mother and say, she's in perfect health. So the first thing that I learned was that I have nothing at all to do with my health. It's in the hands of the experts. And after declaring to me to be in perfect health, the doctor would give me an injection. So I learned that in order to be healthy, you have to use drugs. Now, you may think that I'm being a little facetious when I say this, but you will see that the vast majority of people have in fact learned this, and I was able to unlearn it, but most people haven't. They still actually believe that when they go to the doctor, it's mommy, daddy, God doctor. And that they have to believe everything the doctor says. And one of the tasks of Abundantly Well, the new book, is to help you become your own expert. Because, in fact, the doctors don't know as much as you would hope that they actually know. And many of the tests that they are recommending to help them know can be very detrimental to your health. So what happened to me personally was that my parents didn't realize that I was enough child for any family, and they had another one. The nerve.
The nerve.
And I was very unhappy about that, but we lived in the South where you have to be a lady no matter how young you are. So instead of getting pissed off, I got a bladder infection.
Okay.
And that bladder infection worked really well for my entire childhood. Anytime I was upset, I got a bladder infection. I had so many bladder infections that I was given the antibiotic to cure the bladder infection so frequently, and it turned your urine bright orange. I thought that was the color of urine.
Wow.
I took so much of that antibiotic. Well, I left high school, which was very boring to me, and went to college. I applied to both MIT and UCLA. And MIT said I needed a remedial chemistry course. And of course, at 17, I thought I would never need chemistry in my life. What a mistake. But then at 17, we know so little, although we think we know so much. So I went to UCLA And at UCLA, this was back in the 60s. All the students in universities and colleges were under 20, and everybody who was teaching was over 25. And so when I looked around the lunchroom and there was a woman, oh God, she must have been 30 at least. I went over and I sat next to her and I said, "What are you doing here? Are you a student?" She said, "Yes." I said, "That's so unusual. Why are you a student?" She said, "Well, I'm changing my career." I said, "So what career did you have that was so bad you don't want to do it anymore?" She said, "Public health nurse." I said, "What's so bad about that?" She said, "If I see one more young woman go into kidney failure from being given Gantracin to cure her bladder infections, I'm going to pull my hair out." And I said, "What's Gantracin?" She says, "It's an antibiotic. It turns your urine orange." I said, "Oh, I have taken so much of that. How do I tell if my kidneys are okay?" She said, "How do you feel in the morning?" I said, "Like everybody has a backache." She said, "How old are you?" I said, 17. She said, "That's your kidneys. 17-year-olds don't have backaches." So that was a big wake-up call to me. I realized, wow, that modern medicine wasn't curing me. It wasn't making me healthy. I had not understood that before. And just about at the same time, I discovered that despite the fact I'd been taking birth control pills for 5 months, I was pregnant.
Oh.
So I also found that modern medicine maybe wasn't quite as good as it thought it was. And I opened the newspaper, and there were pictures of thalidomide babies. If you remember, back in the mid-60s, perfectly healthy women were given a drug that caused their babies to be born without legs and without arms. It was pretty scary. So 1, 2, 3, bam, bam, bam. I'm out of modern medicine. I'm a pregnant woman. I'm not going there. So I was living in Manhattan at the time. I had left UCLA and went to Manhattan. And I went to the main branch of the public library, right up all those stairs, right past the lions. And I said to the librarian, "I want some books on herbs." It was 25 years later that one of my aunts said to me, "Did you know that your great-grandmother was the village herbalist in Switzerland?" No, of course I didn't, but my DNA knew that. So they got me at the main branch of the New York Public Library, all 4 books they had on herbs. I've now written 6. Right. And 3 of them told me to put basil with my tomatoes and dill with my cucumbers. It's good advice, but it was not the advice I was looking for. So I had to kind of delve and search and look for myself. And in doing all of that delving and searching and looking, what I was able to articulate is that there are 3 basic ways of looking at health and healing. There's the scientific way, which we call modern medicine. And in modern medicine, we measure and we fix. So you go to a doctor, and they're going to measure your blood pressure. And if it doesn't measure up, they're going to fix it. Or you go to the optometrist, and they'll measure your eyes. And if it doesn't measure up, they'll fix them. Now, when you go to the eye doctor and you're tested, what's the goal? What eyesight do you want?
2020.
What's 2020?
That you can see near and far, and you don't need glasses, and you can see okay at night?
No. 2020 is the eyesight that a 20-year-old white man has at 20 feet. That's why it's called 2020.
Okay.
So when you have 20/20 vision, you are seeing just like a 20-year-old white man. Is that appropriate for you?
No, because I'm not 20 and I'm not a man.
That's right. So you see, when we are being measured, we may not even want to measure up. People go all hysterical on me when I tell them I have never had my cholesterol tested, and I never will, because it doesn't matter to me what my cholesterol is. There's no proven connection between cholesterol and heart disease. So, I'm going to live a healthy life. We know what makes your heart healthy. Fiber in your diet, eating well, exercising well. These are the things that make your heart healthy. I don't need a test to tell me that. The scientific tradition. It's great when we can measure something and fix it. But health is not fixity. And especially in chronic conditions, many people find that the scientific tradition does not deliver for them, and so they go off searching for alternative medicine. And most alternative medicine is practiced in the heroic tradition. The heroic tradition balances and cleanses. So the heroic tradition is all about getting the toxins out. It's about liver cleanses. The difficulty is that cleansing is inherently damaging. Hard to believe, isn't it? They did a very interesting study. They went into a number of different kitchens and they looked at the bacteria, especially bacteria that could make you sick in those kitchens. Then they went all the way from, the woman, we've all met one of those who has the can of Lysol in a holster on her hip, and she's spraying every surface constantly, right? There's no germs in her kitchen, to the bachelor who's got, dirty dishes piled up in the sink, pizza boxes everywhere. And it turned out that the most lethal foodborne bacteria were in the most clean kitchen. And that the fewest foodborne bacteria were in the filthy kitchen. How can that be? In the same way that we now begin to understand gut flora is that there are both beneficial and non-beneficial bacteria there. And when we try to kill the beneficial ones, we wind up killing a lot of the good stuff too. And that's what happens when we cleanse. Balance, of course, is the state that immediately precedes death. Let's try it for a second. Inhale. Excellent. You're so balanced. That's wonderful. Just don't exhale, because then you'll be imbalanced, right? But you have to exhale in order to be alive. So to be alive is rhythmical. It's not balanced. We have to be able to be flexible. And thus we have the wise woman tradition. The wise woman tradition says that we are already whole. We are already holy. We are already healthy exactly where we are right now. And that we can add to that, we can nourish our health and our wholeness and become healthier and more whole, and thus abundantly well. So these are the three traditions: the scientific tradition, which measures and fixes; the heroic tradition, which balances and cleanses, both of which are antithetical to health; and the wise woman tradition, which nourishes wholeness without the goal of getting rid of anything. Yeah. So, Abundantly Well, my new book, talks about all three of those traditions. In the very beginning, I talk about the three traditions so that you're kind of established within that. And then we go through each of the 7 medicines: serenity medicine, story medicine, mind medicine, lifestyle medicine. Then there's the gap: alternative medicine, pharmaceutical medicine, and deep medicine. And when we get to deep medicine, we need to revisit the three traditions, because deep medicine looks very differently from those three perspectives. From the scientific perspective, deep medicine is surgery, radiation, chemotherapy. It's CAT scans, it's MRIs, it's X-rays. These are invasive. They go deep into the corpus. From the heroic viewpoint, deep medicine is cleansing, poking, puking, purging. The idea behind the heroic tradition is very, very old. It goes back to dynastic Egypt. the idea that there are bad things in our body that have to be removed, and thus bleeding and puking and giving herbs that are very laxative to get the filth out of the body. In the wise woman tradition, deep medicine is psychoactive plants. Because there are times when we have to say, either I'm going to give in to what's happening to me, or I am really going to stand here and fight. And both are acceptable choices. One of my mentors, Elizabeth Kubler-Ross, was a big one for fighting and using creative visualization to fight your cancer. And she was counseling a Quaker man, and she said, now you have to, envision what's going to kill your cancer. And he said, I'm a Quaker. I'm for peace. I don't kill anything. She said, but you have to kill your cancer. He said, I'm not going to do it. And she glared at him, and she said, well, I'll be back here in a week, and you're going to tell me how you're dealing with your cancer. When she came back, he said, I have created a core of loving beings that are going to my cancer and removing it cell by cell with great love and kindness. So when I say fight, it's by your own rules, right? But there are times, yes, when we are pushed and we need deep medicine. The first four medicines, serenity medicine, story medicine, mind medicine, lifestyle medicine, are what I call the foundational medicines. Those are the ones we want to engage in every single day. They are going to build health for us. The last three medicines, alternative medicine, pharmaceutical medicine, and deep medicine, save our lives, but they don't promote health. And that's why there's a gap between the first four and the last three, because that gap gives us an opportunity to stop and say, is this where I want to go? You said that you listened to the blog talk show, and so you probably heard, not last night, but last week, a woman called up. She was concerned because her husband, who for all intents and purposes was very healthy, has low cholesterol, had not just a heart attack, but several heart attacks. And she was very frightened by this. So she decided to go to a cardiologist because she wanted to engage in preventative medicine. And I bet you can guess what the cardiologist suggested to her as preventative medicine.
A statin.
Correct. And she was horrified and aghast. And she said, that's a drug. And he said, no, it's preventative medicine. So she called me up and said, how can they drug me? I said, well, if you go to a doctor to get his preventative medicine is not much about your diet or your lifestyle. That's back in the foundational medicines. They're going to be offering you drugs. How do they say to prevent breast cancer? By having a mammogram? Excuse me, that's hard radiation that causes cancer. So the whole idea of preventative medicine in the scientific tradition is not what most of us would truly think of as preventative, because we think of preventative as actually building health. And that's what the first four foundational medicines do. And that's what I said is I wouldn't have my cholesterol measured. I don't want to take a cholesterol lowering drug. I'm going to involve myself in lifestyle medicine. Right? We also know that serenity medicine, that meditation, can actually have profound effects on the heart and the health of the heart. I actually started writing Abundantly Well over 30 years ago. I've been working on it very actively for 20 years and extremely actively for the past 2 years. And when I first started writing it, I pretty much had to say, believe me, meditation works. Even 20 years ago, I had to say, believe me, story medicine is important. But now, over the past 2 years, so much science has been done on these medicines that I don't have to say, believe me anymore. I can now say, here are the studies. Here is the American Heart Association begrudgingly and dragging its feet, admitting that meditation can actually be good for your heart.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Well, I do think that you've been a pioneer in many ways, because I've things that you've written a long time ago that about inflammation and about meditation and about a lot of things, and that are just now becoming popular in the last couple of years. So I applaud your effort and persistence.
That's okay. That's
Yeah.
part of the job of being an Aquarius.
Yes. Okay. When's your birthday? February what?
We can ahead of where the game is and alert you to what might be useful for you.
Okay. So you're a February birthday.
Yeah, birthday coming up in a couple of weeks, February 8th.
Okay. Very cool.
I'll be 74. Oh, what a big number.
74. You look great and you got a lot of energy, so that's like you must be doing something right.
Nourishing herbal infusions. People say to me, well, what should I eat, Susan? And I say, well, what you eat is pretty hard to change. But what you drink can be really easy to change. So nourishing herbal infusions are a way to get high quality nutrients, vitamins, minerals, protein, phenols, anthocyanins, saponins, right? All of those important constituents in plants into you with few or no calories. Lots of protein, very little calories. Wow. So I make quart of nourishing herbal infusion each evening, measuring out 1 ounce of herb by weight, putting it in a quart jar, filling that jar to the top with boiling water, putting a tight lid on it, turning off the fire and the light, and going to sleep. The next morning, I strain it out, or if I'm in a big rush, I just grab the jar and strain it through my teeth as I drink it. That nourishing herbal infusion, once it's strained and the plant material is squeezed out really well, then the plant material can go into your compost or sprinkled in your plants in pots in your house, or even thrown out into the lawn. And the liquid itself goes in the refrigerator, and you can drink it cold, you can drink it hot, you can add honey to it, you can add whiskey to it, whatever you like. But drinking nourishing herbal infusion, actually, we say, don't change your diet, let your diet change you. Because what happens when you drink nourishing herbal infusion is that your taste buds literally change. I remember Belinda, who apprenticed, and we have talking stick every morning where everyone is allowed to speak uninterrupted. And when Belinda got the talking stick, she looked at me and she said, I hate you. Now, this is a very important part of an apprenticeship. Apprenticeship has 3 stages. The false positive transference. Wow, Susan is wonderful. I want to go study with her. The false negative transference. God, Susan is awful. I'm leaving here. And the true positive transference. Ah, Susan is a wonderful person, and she's a person just like the rest of us. Aha. Okay. So you have to get through the false negative to get to the true positive, right? So it's when somebody says, I hate you, I think, good. I'm so glad, right? When an apprentice hates me, that's right in the pattern. And I'm always curious, why do you hate me? Because this is going to tell me a lot, right? And I couldn't interrupt. It was talking stick. And so Belinda says, I hate you because you made my M&Ms taste bad. Right? And like you, I'm like, what? And she continued. She said, you don't allow us to drink even water. We have to drink nourishing herbal infusion. And it's true, the apprentices are not allowed to drink anything but nourishing herbal infusion. And as a matter of fact, I suggest it for everybody. And she said, And I didn't understand that you knew that chocolate is a food group. I supply the apprentices with good quality dark chocolate. She said, so I brought my own M&Ms, she said, and I went through my first bag in the first week here, and I opened the second bag last night, she said, and I thought somebody had done something to it because it smelled so bad. And I tried to put some in my hand and bring them to my mouth, and my mouth puckered up and started spitting and drooling and would not allow me to put that in my mouth. Don't change your diet. Let your diet change you. Once you start drinking nourishing herbal infusions and you start mineralizing and getting those high quality proteins, as well as changing your gut flora, your desire for foods changes remarkably. I do a green goddess week, and women come and they are here with me for 7 days. Now, you wouldn't think there would be much change in 7 days, but again, they are only drinking nourishing herbal infusion, no coffee, no tea, no water. And on the last night that we are together, I put out cookies and chocolate. It's the first sweet that they have had. And you would think that they would tear into it and eat every cookie and every bit of chocolate, but in fact, the group rarely eats even half of what I put out. And the next morning, I bring it out and I say, this is what's left over. And they all laugh and say, yeah, I thought I was going to eat handfuls of cookies, but you know what? I ate one and it was so satisfying, I didn't want to eat another. The craving for sugar is really a displaced craving for minerals. And the nourishing herbal infusions feed us minerals in ways that are ideally suited for our bodies. And we're always going to love sweet. Sweet is wonderful. What do we call people that we really care about or really love?
Honey, sugar.
Honey, sugar, sweetie, cookie, cake, right? We know what sweet is about. Sweet is about love. We're always going to want it, but we're not going to go crazy about it if we are filled with minerals.
Okay, well, I have a couple of things to say. One, I'm going to put information below the video and links about what we're talking about, because for a lot of people, it'll be the first time they've heard nourishing herbal infusions and the first time they've heard about the scientific wise woman way. So I just want to mention that we're going to, like, I'll have organized follow-up information below the video. And I also wanted to mention, I agree. I think that once you nourish your body and reach a certain level of health, you can listen to your body without fear, because a lot of people have they have this idea that their body is some sort of like rogue child who throws temper tantrums and who cannot be trusted. And like, because if you say, well, just listen to your body, what do you want to eat? Because people want to know, like, how many grams of meat should I eat? How many grams of rice? When should I eat it, at 12:01 or 12:06? You know, so like there's so many people that are very, very obsessed with details about food and eat with their minds instead of their bodies, and I think that there's like a control issue with food for a lot of people. And you know, I went through that as well, just because I didn't know if we're so disconnected, if we're so disconnected from our food, it's easy to create these weirdo ideas about food and lose contact with the fact that your body can actually tell you what it needs and wants.
Yes, absolutely. And I have seen that as well, that many people are in a paranoid relationship with their body. They don't trust their body at all. Someone once said to me, well, you know, in the wise woman tradition, you could just eat anything. Why don't you go out and have a cocaine vodka hot fudge sundae? And I said, because if you're listening to your body, you would only do it once. Your body would tell you, not again. That was a drag. I didn't like that. But yes, we have to come to a place where we can trust our bodies, and drinking nourishing herbal infusions is an easy thing to do. You don't have to change anything. If you're eating junk food, if you're eating fast food, if you're eating out of vending machines, that's fine. That's absolutely fine with me. Just start drinking your nourishing herbal infusions. You want to keep on drinking coffee? That's fine. Keep on drinking coffee. That's an herb too, right? But drink a quart of nourishing herbal infusion a day, and literally within a couple of weeks, you will start to see amazing changes. People have told me they're off their type 2 diabetes drugs, they're off their blood pressure drugs, that they're off their antidepressant drugs, they're no longer anxious. You would think that these nourishing herbal infusions are miracles, and you know what? I do. After seeing hundreds of thousands of people change their lives by doing nothing more than adding nourishing herbal infusions to whatever it is they're eating. And then, you know, a year later, they get in touch with me and say, oh, guess what? I'm not eating out of vending machines anymore because I can't get that stuff anywhere near my nose. You know, we actually begin to be able to smell and taste. And that's what you're talking about. That then builds a faith and a confidence in our body that it really can do that. Meanwhile, what I say to people is, if you are eating any whole food that has not been processed, then you're probably good.
Yeah.
And it doesn't matter when you eat it or in what quantity. There was a very famous experiment done with children back in the 40s in which they let children eat anything they wanted and simply observed and watched what they ate. And over a period of 10 days, although on any given day, no child ate a balanced, if 10 days they all chose a really adequately balanced diet. What many people have not heard is they repeated this 50s with processed foods, and no child was able to choose an adequate diet. In the 40s, there weren't, you know, sugar-sweetened cereals. So it was all what we would call whole foods now, all right? What I'm saying is any real food unprocessed. Once you start processing it, then you wind up with heart disease, you wind up with type 2 diabetes, you wind up with metabolic syndrome. Your body literally just cannot keep itself healthy on processed foods, but it can keep itself healthy on any kind of natural food. So you can eat what you want. It's okay. You want to eat meat? Eat meat. You want to not eat meat? Don't eat meat, but you won't be very healthy.
Yeah, meat.
You know, you're designed to eat meat. Meat contains blood, and blood contains heme, Heme, and heme combines in your body to form hemoglobin. You probably have heard of hemoglobin, right?
Right. It's responsible for carrying oxygen in your blood.
Oxygen and nourishment to every cell in your body. And we can't make heme. We have to consume heme. So if you don't eat meat, you're not getting heme. And what happens is that you die from the edges in. Ever held the hand of a vegan and their hand was like a dead person's hand, like ice?
Well, you know, I used to
that is exactly what's happening. Same thing with raw fooders, right? You hold their hands are cold, cold, cold. I get apprentices occasionally who, because of dietary, what I call indiscretions, right? Which means being vegan or eating raw food. I have cold hands, and usually we warm those hands up in 5 or 6 days.
Because they're...
I don't eat a lot of meat, and the meat that I eat is generally locally raised, either by myself or my friends or at my CSA. And but I do understand the critical importance to have some red meat in the diet for optimum health.
Okay, so I have a couple of things to say about meat, and I want to go down another path with that. But before we do that, I just want to talk briefly about the Nourishing Herbal Infusions, because there are 5 herbs that you recommend. That they're not aromatic herbs. It's not like a rosemary or something, or that you're making infusions with. You're making nutritive herbs like nettles and oat straw and comfrey and red clover and
Linden.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
So, but I guess my question is, a lot of my audience is around the world, especially throughout Latin America, and access to, if they live in a city and are trying to buy herbs, there's not really a mountain rose herbs in Mexico or Argentina or
And does mountain rose not ship to Mexico?
I don't know that they do, but I know that they do. When they ship in the States, it's so expensive. I can't imagine. I think it would be cost prohibitive to ship to Latin America, and I think there might be
nettle grows throughout Mexico, Central America, and South America. Nettle is a worldwide plant.
Okay.
So if there are not sources for dried herbs, then this is a golden opportunity for someone. I was talking to someone at Mountain Rose last year, and they said to me, Susan, do you understand that you have changed the way that herbs are sold in the United States? And I said, how can that be? And they said, well, prior to your telling people about Nourishing Herbal Infusions, we used to sell pounds of herbs to stores, and people would come to the store and buy herb by the ounce. And now individual people are buying pounds and pounds and pounds of herbs from us. Because think about it, if you use an ounce of herb a day, you're going to be using 2 pounds of herb per month, or 25 pounds of herb a year to make your Nourishing Herbal Infusions. That is going to change how herbs are sold, and it means that far more growers in the United States. I don't know if you've been drinking Nourishing Herbal Infusions long enough to have gone through the years where you couldn't get nettle or you couldn't get oat straw because so many people wanted it and the production had not ramped up enough. Now it's pretty solid, right? Although a couple of years ago, so many people started brewing beer that they ran out of hops. So it is certainly quite possible, and there are YouTubes showing me harvesting and drying nettle so that you can see very easily how to do it. That if you don't have a resource to buy it from, but I encourage someone to start that as a business. The first time I went to New Zealand, which has so much coastline, I was shocked to discover that no one was selling seaweed in New Zealand. And when I went back 6 years later, there were 4 businesses selling seaweed because I had said, yo, this is a great business opportunity. Get out there, get your seaweed, and start selling it to people. And they were very happy that they had done that. So light a candle, don't curse the darkness, yes?
I want to show you something. Wait, just 1 second.
Okay. Nettle.
Will you move the camera just a little bit so I can see we can see
Oh, I'm sorry. There we go.
That's perfect. Yeah, you know who this is I ordered from? This is Julie. You're a past apprentice. This is
yes.
And this is her oat straw.
There you go. All
Yeah.
right. Now, does she grow and harvest that herself? It doesn't look like it. It looks like it's from Frontier.
Well, I don't know. I thought that she did, maybe the nettles, but
Do you see how nicely it's cut?
yeah, it's Frontier.
It's Frontier. You don't do that at home.
Okay, well, no, you're right.
At home, you wind up cutting with a pair of scissors, right? That's Frontier Urban. You'll get it at a better cost if you buy directly from Frontier.
Okay. Okay.
Although I love Julie, and I'm so glad that she makes it available to people, especially out on the island.
Yeah,
right. You know, when I travel, like I was in Australia for a month, and I took infusion herb with me. There was no problem. I didn't even have to pack it in my checked luggage. I took it right in my carry-on, and there was no problem at all.
So why do you why do you use fresh, why is it only dried plant matter as opposed to fresh plant matter for an infusion? Is it simply because of the volume?
No. Plants have cell walls. You don't. Your body does not have cell walls. You have cell membranes, right? And that means you dehydrate a lot faster than a plant does. We've all had a plant in a pot in our house that has gotten totally wilted, and we've watered it, and it springs back to life. A person who gets that wilted is probably going to die, right? So we have cell membranes, which are lipid. They're oils, and that's why water doesn't hydrate, because water and oil don't work together. So water just slides on through your body. It's not really used by your body very well at all. And I suggest that people stop drinking water, drink Nourishing Herbal Infusion instead. But plants have cell walls. The wood of the door that you went through is the cell walls of a plant. In order to get the nutrition which is held behind the cell wall, we have to break that cell wall. And we can tell we have done that because there is a texture change and a color change. So if you're used to cooking your greens until they're still bright green and crunchy, you have not liberated any of the minerals from their greens. Kale and collards need to be cooked for a minimum of 1 hour. As a matter of fact, I don't think there's any vegetable that I cook for less than an hour. And people say, oh, it'll be mush. And yet when they come and eat here, it's not mush. And more to the point, children cannot get enough of the cooked greens that we serve. They go back for second, third, and fourth helpings on the kale. And parents say, I can't get my kid to eat kale at all. I said, yeah, you're trying to feed your kid raw kale, and kids will not eat raw kale because they know it ain't good for them. Right? But once it's really cooked, then they absolutely love it. So we have to break the cell wall. There are 5 ways to break the cell wall. Apply heat for long enough. Just established for most vegetables, that's about an hour. You don't send them for swimming lessons. I cook my kale in an inch of water. By the time it's cooked, there's virtually no water left. The exceptions to that would be beets and carrots, because we love the cooking water from beets and carrots and drink it all down. There'll be some B vitamins in the cooking water, but if that cooking water has evaporated, the B vitamins are back in the plant, or if you're drinking the cooking water, you will pick them up. All right, so that's one way. Freezing is another way. All right, if you grow a garden, you know what happens when plants freeze. There's a color change and a texture change. They get limp, and they probably turn black. So sufficient heat, freezing, dehydration. The dried herb has the cell wall broken, and that allows us to get the nutrition out. Whereas if you put that fresh herb in there, you're simply not going to do it. Yes, it is also a difficult thing. You can weigh out 1 ounce of dried stinging nettle. The equivalent of that is 4 ounces, a quarter pound of fresh stinging nettle. And people have tried putting a quarter pound of fresh stinging nettle in a quart jar, right next to the one with 1 ounce of dried stinging nettle, fill them both up with hot water and allowed them to sit. And they say it is obvious within 15 minutes that nutrition and minerals are coming out of the dried nettle and nothing is coming out of the fresh nettle. So we can use sufficient heat, we can freeze, we can dehydrate, we can ferment. That's one of the things that you encourage people to do. Fermentation causes the production of vitamins. Sauerkraut has 10 to 12 times more vitamin C than fresh cabbage does. All right. Beer has up to 30 times more B vitamins than the barley does. So fermentation is a way to magnify and create vitamins and to liberate minerals. And the last way, there's heating, freezing, dehydrating, fermenting, and covering in oil. All right. In a study looking at salad consumption in breast cancer, women who ate salad every single day but ate it without salad dressing had as much breast cancer as women who never ate salad. Women who ate salad every day but ate it with no fat or low fat salad dressing had as much cancer as women who never ate salad. The only women who had a reduction in breast cancer risk from eating salad were those who put 2 tablespoons of oil on their serving of salad.
But because fats help us absorb nutrients in vegetables. I mean, there's no point in eating a vegetable without fat on it.
It definitely is very useful. And avocado is fat.
Yeah.
And egg yolk is fat. It does, you know, if you don't want to be putting olive oil, although a doctor said to me, food is just the way you get olive oil in your body.
I don't like olive oil that. I mean, I like, but I think I use butter more. But olive oil is great.
Whatever fat you want, it's good. Again, you're drinking your Nourishing Herbal Infusions. Your body will let you know what is going to work really well for you. I was staying with people who had gotten food poisoning, and then as an aftermath, they were somewhat disturbed by some foods that they had been okay with, like olive oil, and they had switched to coconut oil. And it was interesting being in a household where the only fat was coconut oil. And by day 4, I was about ready to chew off somebody's leg to get some animal fat. My body was shrieking, butter, meat, give me some real fat. It was like the coconut oil just was not clicking in my body. It's very interesting to see. I have nothing against coconut oil. It just wasn't giving me what I needed.
That makes sense. So that leads us into the next part of the conversation. Just to recap, you were talking about the scientific tradition, the heroic tradition, and the wise woman tradition. And so much of what we consider to be alternative medicine is heroic, that which balances and cleanses. And this idea of like, I'm a sinner and I have to punish myself. And I think a lot of the vegan movement is like based out of like a deep, almost like self-hatred or this idea that, you know, you have to like constantly cleanse yourself and for the sins of the world. I mean, some people are gonna not like that I said that, but whatever. I think that that's true. And
have you ever seen me at a conference talk to somebody who's a vegan?
No, but
okay. So the first thing I say to them is I go over to them and I look into their eyes and I say, "I love you."
Okay.
I love you so much that you can't come in my house. And I take a step back. In fact, I don't want you to touch me. That's how much I love you. And I take another step back. And I don't want anybody like you to be anywhere around me. That's how much I love you. And I take another step back. And I look at them and I say, do you feel loved? And they say, no. And then looking in their eyes, I slowly move forward again. Walk up to them, gently take their shoulders in my hands and say, I love you so much. I'm going to eat you up and make you part of me. And to me, I think that that is very, very clear. When we reject something, we cannot in the same breath say that we love it. So we could argue endlessly about whether vegans hate themselves, but there is no argument they hate animals. Even though they would all say they love animals, but in fact, opting out has never improved anything, and no animal has been saved by not being eaten. About 15 years ago, Sally Fallon and I were very concerned because family farms were winking at it. About one family farm was closing its gates about every 5 minutes, and family farms were fast disappearing. And we said, what can two women do? And we decided to be meat activists because the animals are the heartbeat of the family farm. You want organic food? I say to vegans, no organic food for you. That's grown with animal manure. No animals, no animal manure, no organic food. And in a wonderful irony, most vegans understand that vitamin B12 is also a limiting nutrient. You can get it only from animal products, and they're going to have to take synthetic vitamin B12. And all vitamin B12 is now made with genetically modified organisms. So you cannot take a vitamin B12 supplement that isn't GMO. That's how whacked being a vegan is, that you're forced to depend on a GMO to actually live. And of course, lack of vitamin B12 makes you dumb. As a matter of fact, people have been diagnosed with dementia due to lack of B12. It literally, I'm not just slurring somebody, I'm not putting somebody down, I'm being scientific. It makes you dumb, it dumbs you down. All right, so again, we don't have to be ugly Americans. We don't have to have bacon for breakfast, bologna for lunch, and pork chops for dinner here. All right? But a small amount of meat every 4 to 6 weeks is ideal for human health. You know, your ancestors never ask, what will I eat? Your ancestors ask, will I eat?
I find that I need to eat meat more than that to be healthy, probably because of my constitution and because I was vegan. Well, and that was years ago, but a lot of people say, well, you have access to nice quality meat, so that's great for you, but most of us don't, and so we shouldn't be eating meat.
Well, that's what Sally Fallon and I did by becoming meat activists. Right. Anywhere in the United States now, you can go into a store and find grass-fed meat. Anywhere in the United States, the smallest town. And if that's not true where you are, then make it so. Right. Because this is how we change animals' lives. We change animals' lives by eating them. There are now more family farms than there were when Sally and I were upset about it, because with good people eating meat, family farms have come roaring back.
Mm-hmm.
And there's a great movement to make good quality meats available to people, because people now understand that that's how we can truly love animals.
Will you touch upon your talk? Because when I was with you in Whidbey Island, you talked about life and death, or that was the title of your discussion that day. And you mentioned, because you're a homesteader, you're a goat lady, you're a goat.
I'm a goat. Yes. I keep dairy goats, make my own cheese, make my own yogurt. And of course, in order for a goat to give milk, she's going to give birth. And at least half of the time, that's going to be a buck. You know, when we are looking at an archaeological site, we can tell almost to the year when those particular people started domesticating animals. Because prior to the domestication of animals, the piles of bones, or bones from old animals, bones from young animals, bones from female animals, bones from male animals, as soon as animals are domesticated in that culture, the bone piles are only the bones of young male animals, because those are the ones we don't need.
Mm-hmm.
You only need one buck for all of your does. You do not need multiple bucks, so those are the ones that you eat. And you know, because I am so focused on the plants and spend so much time with the plants, it's very obvious to me, as I put it, that plants are people too. But in teaching homesteading, what I found was that there's a hierarchy of eyes. So when I taught homesteading, we did it hands-on, and I brought a chicken to class, and we gave death to that chicken. And everybody in class showed up to give death to the chicken and learn how to do that. And then the next week, we gave death to a rabbit, and only half the class would ever show up. And I asked myself, why is this? And I realized the rabbit's eyes look more like human eyes.
Huh.
And the closer the eyes are to our eyes, the more consciousness we give that thing. Plants not having eyes, we tend to not give consciousness to. And yet more and more we are discovering that plants are conscious, they do communicate, they do take care of their young, and all of the criteria for conscious living are met by plants. So I understand, as a living being on this planet, that there's only one rule here. And that rule is, I eat you and you eat me. And there's no getting out of that rule. All right. There are people in India who vow never to kill anything, and they wear a gauze mask over their mouth so they should not inhale an insect without, knowing it. And they hire people to sweep the path in front of them so they shouldn't step on any insect. And they don't live very long. Right? And that's one way to live your life. There's nothing wrong with that. That's a choice. But most people that I meet don't want to do that. They want to live a healthy, active, happy life. And they're more interested, as you say, in what's the best diet for me to follow, what's the best way to go. And let me be clear, when I say that I'm eating meat every 4 to 6 weeks, that doesn't mean I'm eating it only once. If we give death to a baby goat, that means we're eating that meat for many, many, many days, doesn't it? Mm-hmm. Right. So it's not that I'm just saying that I'm eating it only once. I'm saying that, every 4 to 6 weeks, we have some meat, and eating that meat may go on for 2 weeks.
Mm-hmm.
until we have actually eaten it all. And of course, we invite people and share and do all of that whenever needed. They just recently found old cache of some very, very early Americans, and there were 4 frozen woolly mammoths in this cache, several of which had had prime pieces already taken from them, and they were being kept underground and frozen so that the people had access to the meat whenever they wanted it.
Yeah, I think that there's no question that we're designed to eat meat, and that it's necessary to live
for abundant health. You can be marginally healthy without it. Absolutely. I often ask people what the birth weight of a child in India is, because most people have met someone from India and are aware that they're quite short in stature. And so I say, what do you think the birth weight of an Indian child is? And they usually guess low, 5 pounds, 6 pounds. And I say, no, it's the same as an American baby, 8 to 10 pounds. But because they don't have meat or good quality protein in their diet, they don't achieve a very high end growth. You can see this so clearly in Japan. You know, Japan used to be closed off to the world, and when they opened up, they no longer had to grow their own rice. And it was never a good place to grow rice. They turned all of their rice paddies into cow pastures. And now there's dairy products all over Japan. Every household I was in proudly served me cheese or yogurt or milk. And all of the teenagers are now tall. And they say, look, you know, this is what milk does for the young. It makes them strong and healthy. We're so glad to finally have this in our diet.
Well, dairy is a whole other thing, because dairy gets such a bad rap, and most people say, you know, most people talk about Asian cultures not having dairy and being more, you know.
But they do have dairy, and they have as much of it as they can possibly get. We shouldn't mistake poverty for choice.
Right, right. I
Right?
book about gut health, and the doctor was saying, like, we can't compare ourselves to like hunters and gatherers from other countries, because people will say, well, look at all the carbs they eat, and look at how few meat they have. But it's, if they had more, they eat more. It's you know, so but
Yeah.
then the question becomes, well, people say, well, there's too many billions of people on earth and we can't all do that. So, but that's another part of the discussion. I think the first part of the discussion is the foundation of the fact that, yeah, if we had our choice, and if we really listen to what like the body wants and needs, many people would be eating a lot more meat.
Yeah.
So, but then one thing, I had a discussion the other day with this very well-known doctor in Peru, so I won't say his name, but he's not a vegan, but he promotes veganism, and that's a problem, I think. And so, because his followers take it very seriously if he's promoting veganism, but he's not, because he eats fish. Poor fish. Everyone thinks they're like stupid, kind of like plants, and so they don't have a problem with eating fish, but they think it's
hierarchy of the eyes. The eyes don't look like ours, so it's okay.
Yeah.
Must not be conscious.
So he was saying that if you aren't capable of killing the animal yourself, then you shouldn't eat the meat. But
so I take it he kills every tomato he eats.
no, he doesn't. I don't think he's ever grown anything. I don't think he knows how to have a garden.
You know what my mother used to say? If it's sauce for the goose, it's sauce for the gander. Right? That was a kind of an old pre-feminist statement, which means if you're going to tell me to do something, I want to see you doing it.
Right. Well, I get that, and people. So I promote like a nourishing traditions diet. What you promote and what Sally Fallon promotes, and a lot of people say, well, like, can you kill an animal? And I say yes, but I can't. I can. And I will, but I also like, because when we were talking about life and death, you were saying that there's 4 roles in
our ceremony of giving death. We have created 4 roles. Yes. That doesn't mean that it's like any universal thing. Here are some universal things. This is my story. If it works for you, it can be your story. If it doesn't, then you just say, this is Susan's story.
Okay.
Susan's story is that there are 2 powers in all living things, 2 forces. And I call these the life force and the soul force. And they are, in fact, quite different. The life force is created when the male genetic material and the female genetic material come together, whether it's a plant or an animal. And this is even true if you go deeply into sporulation of ferns and mushrooms. There are, we thought there weren't males and females, but there actually are. All right, so that starts the life force, and the life force is in that form until that form dies, and then the life force is ended. So the life force is bound by the physical home that it has. If you were to say to the life force, you have something really awful going on with you and you're going to die, but we could cure you, it would require the elimination of all other forms of life on the planet. Life force would say, fine, go ahead. Life force is as it should be for you and entirely selfish. It's only about you. That's fine. That's what your life force needs to do, is keep you in this body. Soul force exists without a body, but it cannot do anything without a body. So it needs a body in order to do, in order to act. So soul force is very desirous of having a body. Soul force exists before the body or the form, and it exists after the body or the form. So soul force is not tied to an individual form, and it can go in between forms. This should be just fine, except that the soul force and the life force have got to get along and work together in the being, so long as that being is alive, because there are these 2 strong forces in the thing. Now, if you've ever given birth, if you've ever been around anybody giving birth, you know that it can be a painful process and it can be a scary process as well. And that women, even women who really, really want the child that they're giving birth to, can scream and struggle and say, I hate it, I wish I wasn't pregnant, I wish I wasn't having, all kinds of things can go on during the birth, none of which are particularly true. The soul, however, is, if you'll forgive me for saying so, really stupid. This is why it's getting a body, so it can get a little smarter. The soul really is just about as naive as it comes. And so when the soul hears the woman saying, oh, I wish I didn't have this baby, this is killing me, the soul says to the life force, look, what you're doing to your mother, you should just die. And the result of this is often allergies. Name some things that people are allergic to.
Pollen.
Pollen is a protein.
Yeah. Gluten is a protein.
A protein.
Yeah. Casein from the milk, protein.
A protein. Nuts, protein. Soy, protein. Dander, protein. Protein is the building block of life. There is only one allergy, and that is an allergy to life. So I have seen people have some success in sitting down and saying to the soul, hello, soul. I'm so glad you're here. Guess what? You are not in control. You're along for the ride. The life force is in control here, and soul force, take a back seat. Don't tell us to get out of this body because it's not time yet. You can go in between bodies. Time is meaningless to you. However, my life force, tick, 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 participates in linear time. Soul force, spiralic time, totally different. So soul force, take a back seat, enjoy the ride, and leave us alone. We're here to live. So soul force and life force, we cannot take life. We can give death, just as we give birth, but no one takes life. You see, women give birth, men don't give birth. And so women give death, men don't give death. And women have abdicated. Women have laid down the knife. I was in Germany speaking at a large conference. There were over 300 women there, and we were outside. And I was saying that the royal road to peace is for every woman to pick up the knife and be willing to give death. If every woman reclaims her power as the one who gives birth and the one who gives death, that does not mean you must give birth or you must give death, but we must reclaim this power. Then we are on the road to peace. A woman came up to me afterwards and she said, you know, that talk about life and death, that was so stunning. I never heard anything like that. She said, and while you were, there were 3 eagles circling over your head. I said, yeah, the raptors really support me in this. If I am teaching outside, there will almost always be an eagle or a hawk or a falcon, whatever's in the local area. She said, but Susan, you don't understand. Eagles have been extinct in Germany for over 200 years.
I think people will hear this and say, so you're telling women that women need to kill animals?
No, I'm saying that women need to hold the knife. I didn't say anything about killing. As a matter of fact, I said there is no killing.
Yeah, you said we can't take life. We can give death.
Give death. Giving death is a gift. You know, long ago, when grandmother was finished making the world, she went to bed. It had been pretty hard work making the world. And down below on earth, everything was happy. All the things in the water were happy and they reproduced. And the things in the air were happy and they reproduced. And the things on the land were happy and they reproduced. And you know, after some time, things began to get a little crowded. And as they got crowded, the things of the water said, "Grandmother, grandmother, we're getting too crowded." And grandmother, deep in her sleep, turned over, fluffed up her pillow, and went back to sleep. And the things in the air said, "Grandmother, grandmother, it's getting too crowded." And grandmother turned over, fluffed up her pillow, and went back to sleep. And all the things on the land said, "Grandmother, grandmother, it's too crowded here." And grandmother turned over, fluffed up her pillow, and went back to sleep. And so the things in the air, the water, and the land continued to reproduce until it became very, very crowded again. And once again, they called out to grandmother, and grandmother turned over, fluffed up her pillow, and went back to sleep. And everything continued to reproduce until there was no room in the water to swim, there was no room in the air to fly, and there was no room to stand on the earth. And in one voice altogether, they said, "Grandmother, help us." Grandmother turned over, she fluffed up her pillow, but she couldn't get back to sleep. She turned over the other way, she fluffed up her pillow, but she couldn't get back to sleep. And so she got up and she put on her robe of many pockets and she said, "You're right. I wasn't yet done with my creation. I left things out." And she put into her pockets the gifts that were needed. And she went and she gave disease, injury, and death as the gifts that were needed to keep things from being too crowded. And then she went back to sleep. So you see, the gift of death is truly a gift. It is not killing. When women abdicate, then we leave it in the hands of men because death must occur. And men kill. They butcher. They destroy. They give death a bad name. We want death to have a good name. Women, we have to take it back. We have to take back the fact that we are the ones who give death. Again, I am not saying you must go out with a knife and find something to kill. I'm not saying that at all, any more than I'm saying that every woman needs to get pregnant and have a child. No. To claim our mother right does not mean we must be pregnant. It means we must step into that power. To claim our grandmother right does not mean we must kill something, but that we become aware that we already do. In my correspondence course, The Green Witch, the last assignment is to kill something. Everyone kills things. The last time a mosquito bit you, what did you do? You killed it.
Yeah.
But did you kill it with your eyes closed, pretending you hadn't?
No.
Or did you say, "I give honor to the preciousness of your being and I give you death as the greatest gift"? That's what I'm talking about, reclaiming our power. We all already are killers. We pull up weeds out of the garden. Every weed I pull up out of the garden, I say, "Om, Mane Padme Hum." I give honor to the preciousness of your existence. It's all alive. It's all either going to be eaten by me or eat me, one or the other.
Yeah, one time somebody said to me, life in order to sustain itself must in fact consume itself.
Of course.
There you go.
Or did you hear Ryan Drum, who was also at the same conference, Botanicals on the Beach? And it's a great conference. If you haven't go, please go. You will love it. Ryan Drum, with a great chortle, said, "You know, we're all obligate carnivores." And I said, "What do you mean?" He says, "The lining of your digestive system sloughs off every 24 hours and you eat yourself. You're eating meat every single day. There's no way around it." I was harvesting seaweed with him, and at one point I looked down and I said, Ryan, did you know there's all kinds of little baby creatures on this seaweed? And he said, yes. I said, but vegans are going to eat it. He said, trace animal is very good for them. It will keep them alive a little longer.
Well, he's right, and he knows what he's talking about. Ryan Drum is like, he's lived off grid on an island in Washington for a long time. I mean, he knows what it takes to like dance the dance of life and death.
He certainly does. That's right. One of the last times that I visited him there, he said, let's go feed the ducklings. And we went to feed the ducklings, and he counted, and he said, bad word, owls have taken more ducklings. He said, that's it. I'm not sharing with the owls anymore. And he reached out and he grabbed 3 ducklings by the neck and kind of shook them back over his shoulder, killing them, right? Mm-hmm. Giving death to them. And we sat on the cliff and plucked those 3 ducklings and ate them for dinner. Because he didn't want to give them to he didn't want to share with the owls anymore.
Well,
I told my neighbor Yvette, who said, I'm going to get chickens. I said, oh, Yvette, don't get chickens. I said, your eggs will cost you $12 a dozen, and that doesn't count your work. A year later, she said, I'm so glad I got chickens. I'm so glad I didn't listen to you. If I hadn't gotten chickens, I would not have opened the chicken coop and gone nose to nose with a bear. If I had not gotten chickens, I would not have seen an eagle swoop down, pick up a chicken in each claw, and fly off with them. She said, if I wasn't keeping chickens, I would not see the fox sitting at the edge of the lawn day after day, waiting for a chicken to stray away from the flock.
Yeah, it's if you live those people who live in really urban environments, I think, have a hard time accepting that. It's hard to accept that an eagle will take the little chicken away.
If they weren't so little.
Oh,
we live by the Hudson River. It's a big flyway for the eagles. We can actually get to see them mating. It's quite amazing. Yeah,
it is amazing.
Yeah, we have the greatest density of eagles on the East Coast here in the Hudson River Valley. Right, and they are big birds. They have no problem plucking a full-grown chicken up. We get baby eagles too, and they're not. She saw a baby eagle who was kind of struggling to get off the ground with the chicken in 2 claws.
Wow!
It finally managed it. It was having a hard time. It couldn't clear the treetops, but it went up on a branch and ate it up there.
Man, well, I do hope one day that I can come visit your homestead. That would be really great.
That would be wonderful. I'm not sure what else that we want to talk about, but I do need to let you know that I'll need to go in about 5 minutes.
Okay, yes. I think that we can wrap it up. And I will kind of finish saying that I appreciate you for many reasons, and one of those is that I think that you're fully yourself, and that's what you were talking about before, those 3 stages. Like, Susan is a wonderful person, and she's a person just like all of us, and accepting, like, to truly walk the walk where you're fully yourself is a beautiful thing, and like accepting yourself and like all the darkness and all the light that you have inside of you that's a big journey.
That's what apprenticeship is about.
Yeah.
Apprentices say, well, I learn about herbal medicine. I say, yes, but there's much easier ways to learn about herbal medicine. In fact, if you were to simply buy every one of my books and spend 10 years reading those books, you would be an excellent herbalist and you wouldn't have to interact with me at all. Being an apprentice means you're going to interact with me and you're going to be learning about yourself. That's our primary course of study. Right, so that we can find out that there are no perfect people and we don't have to try to be perfect, and that we can be loving of ourselves exactly as we are right now, and that doesn't mean that we can't change. A hologram is a very interesting kind of picture. It's a photograph. Then if you cut it in half, you don't have a top half and a bottom half. You have two entire holograms, the whole thing, even though you cut it in half. They're a little blurrier, and you can keep cutting. You can cut the half and half and the half and a half and half, and you still get a whole hologram. You still get the entire picture. You lose definition each time. And that's what I see many people doing, is that they cut out pieces of themselves that they think are unworthy. And so they are still whole, but they're blurry, lost definition. And so I am not only whole, but because I have reclaimed many of those pieces, I have a sharper definition than you're used to.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Well, thank you, Susan, for being the sharp definition version of yourself. And I'm so glad that this video, it's going to be subtitled in Spanish, so a lot more people will know you and know about your book. And Justine, your daughter, who lives in Costa Rica, can share it with her friends there that speak Spanish. So I'm really grateful for your time, and I wish you a very good afternoon.
Thank you so much for helping me promote my idea that herbal medicine is people's medicine. And thank you also for helping to reweave the healing cloak of the ancients. Every single one of us is important in this endeavor. Green blessings to you, and green blessings to all of you.
Green blessings. Thank you, Susan. Bye-bye.